We continue to aspire for the best. Inflation is not our best meal, yet we must look solutions to end it. Our dear guests, we continue the discussion. While concluding our discussion this last hour, we intend to look at the benefits of the money economy. How do we manage the transactions, the payment, balance of payment, and exchange rate? Looking at lending and depositing interest rates, and also credit to the private sector. As we come to the conclusion of all this, we will be looking at the recommendations that feeds into part of these areas of question. Our financial market, and basically I'm referring to the banking sector, we tend to rely on the private, the foreign banks. Those who control our money, they are foreigners. You know, they're foreigners, we hate them, but it's not good always, as you say, for good in my country. My prayer would have been to have a 50 or 60% of our own bank, based, economy, our own banks, and the other one, they come secondary. And it's worse still, the interest rates tends to be high. They are managed by the Bank of Uganda. Finally, when we go to production, it begins to limit the chances of production. This is the chain that even those who are devised president, they need to know. It's not skyrocket science, neither does it need another prophet from heaven. Doctor, yes, take us into that, because we are coming to the end and we hit the very issues.
One point I'm not going to take much time on is that it's not governance, it's not corporate governance that led to the closure and the sale of Ugandan-owned banks, because we had them, the likes of Greenland. You remember them? There was the most recent one, the one which used to be at Kampala Road, which was taken up by DFCU. That was which bank?
The Uganda Commercial Bank.
There was before. Commercial Bank is back then, but that one
Bank of Commerce. There's also the Bank of Commerce.
Bank of Commerce was this one.
He's having a court case on 22nd.
Yeah, this one owned by the.
There was one which was taken over by DFCU.
Yeah, so
there was a cooperative bank.
It isn't issue of governance that led to these banks being sold. It's because of the high-powered people in the central bank that sold these banks without any clear explanation of why, yet they could have been saved. There is no country that runs a private sector and expects to grow sustainably when the majority shareholders are foreigners, because their equity will always leave the country and go back. When I hear people talk about, I don't know, you know the word in Uganda, Musiga Nsimbi, investors, that let's attract foreign direct investment. Why not first look at domestic resource mobilization? Do we lack people or groups that can buy into some of these companies? We don't lack them, but we are so fixated into FDIs. I know I am one of the people who deals into investment and financing markets, but I also know that these banks are based on systems of the West North African system. If I took my maize to the market, even if it's one bucket of maize, can't I come back with shoes or clothing? Can't I take a tin of G-nuts and then pay for school fees of my kids? Wasn't that a banking system existing in Africa?
Barter trade.
The barter trade, you see? So it's not all about that foreign or there's no lack of capacity inside the country, but it's more of a systematic way which government should look at, that if you're coming to invest in a country, consider local content as 70%, so 30%. Yes. You get it? Look at local content. Employ the local people. Make sure that you have a 10-year period and then start selling shares to the Ugandans. Then they own these companies and institutions and the banks. So for me, I think that from the banking side, that is my take. But also when you look at the credit and lending policies, you see there is a threshold under which you can't go below it. But there are institutions like non-bank investment firms, like the firm I lead. We lend to banks even. But however low we are, the bank will tell that I can't go below this because for you're dealing in patient affordable capital. So who sets those rules? They will say that the central bank. But I mean the central bank is owned, is run, also reports to the Ministry of Finance, much as it's a semi-autonomous entity there, but it has to report back to the Ministry of Finance.
I'm coming back to you so that you give us clarity on that matter.
Yes.
The money lenders, those who are prominent, whatever level they are, they tend to be enjoying too much independence, and they can hike to any interest rate. This is not new to us on this table, where they can even, you ask money every week, you have to pay 30, 50%, 20%, anything, and nothing much is being done to protect the consumers. How can you go about that? Seems to be
the
very
amended
dangerous.
Financial Act of 2017 brought in laws that now govern or manage the money lenders, because back then they couldn't, if one decides to take your property or disappear, you'll never report anywhere. But also the agency banking, these agents you see who serve as bank officers, the mobile monies now that they are independent companies. So that 2017 Act brought in a level of regulation. But still, when you need money, remember you are at the mercy of he who has the money.
Give us your last word as we conclude.
My last word is that there is hope for Uganda, but there is no results when you have faith and you're not conducting action. You just can't sit and pray, wait for some money to fall from somewhere. You need to go into those farms, cultivate those crops, get them into the markets. Let us establish, let us invest in processing farms, and then we have something we take to the global market to be competitive. Right now we have nothing.
We have nothing.
No, nothing to talk about.
Dr. Henry Clark Sembo, the CEO of DALI Uganda, and you have done good work tonight, and you continue doing good work even as you lecture our students over there.
Thank you.
But again, we do implore you to partner with us as Smart84 TV, those projects and the issues related to financial inclusion. This is a good platform that the elites are enjoying to learn more, and we believe that there will be a transformation that will come to our country. Thank you so much for having come tonight. Mr. Fred Chibedi, there is something I will not leave out, Frederick Chibedi. It is relating with those who are flooding money into the economy out of corruption. And I know your audit reports have been always coming out since you are part of the certified public accounts. I know you've had most of your agents in all these audit firms, including government. How can we catch up with the sieves that continue to lessen the opportunity for production?
Well, there's one thing that, or probably to just correct you, when you refer to me from that angle, you should refer to me as CPA, Frederick.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yes, CPA, very, very important.
Very
CPA.
Yeah.
Because with that, then you give me the firm base on which.
Oh yes, CPA,
Yes.
that's right. Certified public
I'll
account.
tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you for a fact. Even before we come to this, I'll tell you for a fact that lending to the private sector has not been helped by the absence of character and integrity of the borrowers. That in itself increases credit risk and the risk at which the Bank of Uganda, the commercial banks can take to be able to lend to you. And I think as an economy, we need to cultivate the character of truthfulness. So people are able to say they are going to pay. When they are unable to pay, they explain that they are unable to pay and they restructure their loans. But let's get back to what happens in this economy. When you issue a report, for example, I issue a report. That report is, as a result of a process, a very long process of understanding the entity, of understanding the strategic direction, those charged with governance, of discussing alternative views of how they could be managing, of discussing the value for money in terms of what they have done. But this report, remember, is written to Parliament. It's actually written to the people of Uganda. Whether the Auditor General hires me to do a report, he has actually hired me on his behalf to write a report to the people of Uganda through Parliament to be able to question this. Question is, and with all respect, due respect to our people in Parliament, do we have the capacity to be able to interpret that report and be able to appreciate the strategic direction and focus and thrust that report is giving you? Recently, there are some discussions you could see going on some of the reports that have been produced. But after that report is investigated and so much is made about of it in the air, you hear so many people being arraigned and being questioned, where are these funds? Where do they end up, these people? Mm-hmm. Do we see a real signal, what we call the tone at the top, that the tone at the top is saying this is not going to be tolerated and there are consequences for it? And I think that is something that we as a country need to hold our leadership, our servants, they are supposed to be our servants, to question, to ask them what they have done with these resources that we have actually lost. And at the end of the day, this is where the real problem is. The problem is with, do we have the capacity? Have we developed a structure to be able to bring those to book and send a signal to generations ahead that this is bad for you? Or do we end up seeing them recycled into many other places, and therefore we're seeing corruption as vindicated and given a new name and allowed to thrive, and somebody having reference points after all, so-and-so did it, and therefore I can do it. So at the end of the day, that corruption ends up in the wastefulness that we're seeing. The non-productive sectors, malls, buildings, lavish spending that only encourages imports rather than exports. And at the end of the day...
Yes, please. I'm coming to you. You have 3 minutes to go. There is a question that feeds into what we are discussing, the money economy and the inflation, especially relating with investment, the balance of payment and the exchange rate, where Uganda's production remains questionable, how we compare ourselves, especially in this competition. We are in the East African economic integration, the community, but we are always facing a challenge, our shilling always being outcompeted by the neighborhood. You go to Kenya, you are defeated. You go to Tanzania, you are defeated. You go to Rwanda, you are defeated. We ask ourselves, what has happened with us? And it is on that point I would like you to come in and maybe give us an explanation on how we can streamline investment in this country. You get a Somali here, and an Eritrean here comes here, is just right. Selling little chapats in a small room. How can we overcome that to have an economy that stabilizes with productivity?
You know, for some years, I was a director at the Export Promotion Board. And the reason why I resigned that job is
you resigned.
The pain of seeing inaction from ourselves in terms of what should be done and what is actually being done. I was part of the team that developed the National Export Strategy. And it was a very well praised document, and parameters of what needed to be done. But when you go to government and see the amount of priorities and where they are put and what can be done, you are hitting a dead horse. The way ministries of government are appraised needs to change. The Prime Minister's office is responsible for appraising the ministries. They appraise them by uptake, not by results.
Not by results.
Unless that changes. Because you see, when you are budgeting and you ask these guys, how much is allocated to the Export Promotion Board? You may want to ask that question today. Meaning to go to the national budget and say, how much is allocated for the promotion of exports within this country? You'll be surprised. Because the Ministry of Trade, how it's appraised, is not based on how many new opportunities you have created, how many new markets you have created. The ambassadors that go to represent Uganda in the different countries, how are they briefed What are they briefed on? When they are there, what do they see? So because of the absence of that ability to follow through policy and be able to say, this is what we are saying, and this is what we mean, and there are consequences for it, and this is how we appraise ourselves, you end up having a scoring system that only scores ministries and agencies only about how much they have spent.
So that information of performance measurement, you are sending a message to the Prime Minister's office.
Yes.
The Right Honorable Nabanja
is
a good information to take. That's good.
I'll add on something that let us make economic activities attractive to the young people. You know, 78% almost of the population of Uganda are either young adults or youth, which means that we should see how to adopt technology in all that we do. For example, agricultural technology, but also utilization of these technologies to drive businesses. And in one way or the other, we shall find ourselves networking with a number of investment hubs globally, and I think that's the way to go.
Allow me to say thank you so much, and I will have you next Wednesday.
Please.
It's not yet over. I have felt there is much more package that is needed to live to these countrymen and countrywomen, and all of it, summing it up, that as reforms are being proposed and all this information sharing to the ears that are ready to hear. And as it is biblical, my brother is an evangelist, let them hear. Exactly. If we take it up, we can change our economy, stabilize it, progress. Singapore is not far better than us. We are very wise Ugandans, as you see here. The brand that is before us, all have been shared. It has been a pleasure to have you. And until we meet next time, thank you, dear viewers and listeners of Smart 24 TV, as we'll be waiting for the News Hour. This has been a good evening. We can overcome inflation, we can have production, we can have economic progress if we are determined and willing to achieve it. I remain yours, Dr. Joseph Tinjeva, and my dear guest, Mr. Frederick Chibedi and Dr. Henry Clark. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you too. Yeah.